All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Communication Service for the Deaf, CSD Learns Roundtable Discussion number 2, Transitions to Online Teaching. First, I want to make sure that you all are accessing this through Zoom. You'll see 4 icons here. This is best viewed through a desktop computer or a laptop, not through a mobile phone. Second, make sure that your volume or sound is on because we have voice interpreters ready to interpret the whole presentation tonight. Also, the third icon is an arrow. If you see an arrow, you can click captions, closed captioning. We have live captioning happening right now. And the fourth icon here is letting you know that if you have any technical difficulties, you can click on the chat option and speak with our tech team working behind the scenes. Now I'll explain how to use Zoom. First, you want to make sure that you have the most updated version of Zoom. Also, you can watch this full webinar on your full screen by clicking full screen mode for easier viewing. You'll see in between the PowerPoint slide and our videos, 2 white lines that you can click and drag in order to stretch the screens for your own comfort. Now for this roundtable discussion, you have the option to raise your hand to participate by clicking Raise My Hand. Also make sure that your camera is then ready to be turned on. Make sure that your sound is off and that you're not using your voice. And remember, we are recording this, so if anyone has to miss this, they will be able to catch up. All right, next slide. We will now introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. My name is Stacy Eilbert. And I'm here today as your host for this webinar, this roundtable. I have been a teacher for many years, over 20, I think actually 23 years to be exact. And I have been Cal Ed's conference chair, working a lot within education and conference discussions such as this, so I'm really excited to be a part of this. Before we go any further, I want to introduce Kent and Nia. Unfortunately, Sari had something come up and she was not able to be here with us today, but we do have 2 fantastic panelists still with us. So Kent Turner, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm a former teacher. I taught at a middle school, at a deaf school. I taught English, science, and various other subjects. And I also have experience with online teaching, self-paced learning. And currently I work at the National Deaf Center in DC as a gaming coordinator where I'm developing gaming curriculum for transition age children from high school age to early college ages. So I'm really looking forward to tonight.
Well, welcome. I also would like to introduce Nia Lazarus. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nia Lazarus. I teach 4th grade at the deaf school. This is my 2nd year doing so, and I do have experience with mainstream school and at a deaf school. However, most of my experience is at the elementary school level. Like I said, I'm at the 4th grade, and I'm also happy to join the discussion tonight and happy to hear from folks in the audience as well as other teachers and educators.
Welcome. I should mention that I also teach high school and I did teach middle school for a few years, but I've mostly taught history and English in high school. I've taught both in a mainstream setting and at deaf schools, but most of my tenure has been over at a deaf school. So now we'll talk about CSD Learns. This is the team behind the scenes making this all happen. Now I'd like to discuss why we're here. The goal for this webinar is for points specifically. We're here to explore and share insight and tools with one another. Kent and Nia both have experience in this field of teaching. We also are here to see what others are doing right now with this huge shift that we've all gone through. It's a big change for everyone. Also, we want to give participants a chance for questions, comments, and thoughts. And also, we will be sharing e-learning resources, materials, and tools. All right, are we all ready for an exciting meeting? Let's go ahead and proceed. We'd like to take a poll and have you click on the button that identifies who you are. Are you a parent, a mainstream educator, an e-learning developer, a deaf school educator, or a student? Please click on the answer. Okay, I'm assuming all of the answers are in. Now let's see the results. It, there are no parents here. That's okay. Looks like we mostly have deaf school educators with the highest percentage of 51%. We also have 37% of you who are mainstream educators. 10% are e-learning developers. That's great. And 5% of you are students. Well, welcome. I hope more people will be joining us as well. Okay, next slide. Now this next poll is for those of you who work with students. We want to know the age group that you work with. Which one in particular, or maybe all of the above or other? Please click on the answer. I have a question for you panelists.
Sure.
What do you think will be the highest percentage represented here? What age group you feel?
This is Nia, possibly middle school, I believe.
And Kent, what do you think?
It really depends on the person. If it's deaf education, right? Let's just focus on deaf education and see how that breaks up into different categories. Let's see who's
Right.
hot.
Okay, let's see. It looks like all of the above has the largest percentage represented at 38%. 13% of you are from elementary schools, 9% from high schools, and it looks like 11% other. I see. Okay. That's a great picture of who we're talking with tonight, and that helps us.
This is Nia. I'm
All
getting some
right.
choppiness.
For this, you can answer in the chat box. Just give a one-word answer as far as why you are here, and I will repeat everyone's answers in the chat box. I'm looking at two screens right now, so please be patient with me. I see improvement. Oh, you all are typing fast. Okay. Improvement, knowledge, curiosity, information, captioning. I'm not sure what you mean by captioning. Strategies, that's a good word. Technical tools, good. You've come to the right place. Okay. To sum it up, basically, we're here for improvement, knowledge, curiosity, strategies and technical tools. All of that relates to education and discussing how we can help elevate education through online teaching now. All right, thank you all for those answers. Now, I have 5 discussion questions that I will pose to the panelists, and then maybe we'll see from there if we can have more respondents as well. This first question I chose as number 1 because I feel it's the most important question. Most of us are at home right now in this new way of life. What used to be normal is no longer normal. Now that we're working from home, you're teaching from home. So this is a very important question. How are you taking care of yourself to keep your self-care going?
Mia, did you want to go first? This is Kent speaking.
All right. Yes, go ahead,
This,
Mia.
well, I have two big trees in the backyard, so I decided to go ahead and buy a hammock. And that's my favorite thing to do right now. I just got it on Friday. I
Oh,
spent
nice.
all my time out there during my downtime, and that helps tremendously. But I'm always outdoors in my backyard. I'm really blessed to be fortunate enough to have a huge backyard with a nice lawn. And so I do have a yoga mat out there as well. I make videos for my yoga classroom. I have students and I expose them to the yoga classroom, and it's nice to show them the outdoors. I don't have an inside, locked in a room type of background. I have the outdoors. I like being outdoors, my backyard specifically, on a nice sunny day. If there's no sun, I'm not really out there. But if it's nice and sunny, that's where I'm at. I can
You live
stretch
in,
and meditate. I can breathe. I love it
yeah,
out there. Yes.
you're living in California, luckily, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
now, Kent?
Well, as a teacher, as a professional, and as an educator, with what's going on in the world at the current moment, I feel like I'm in parent mode most of the time. The kids need something to do constantly. And both of my kids are deaf as well. They do go to a deaf school. Uh, we're fortunate enough to have a packet that we receive once a week. We have video check-ins with the teachers, and it's nice to see how my kids are responding to that type of online instruction. I personally feel if my family's happy, I'm going to be happy as well, because there are a variety of levels of needs, of course, right? Financial, nutritional, and so on and so on. And so the more number of those needs that we can check off and make sure that things are aligned, that things are okay, that students are doing well. Of course, you want to self-care first and then make sure to check in with others, especially our students, to make sure that they are in line with us and also doing well.
Right. Also, myself as a parent and an educator, I do find a conflict with my own children interrupting me, and then I have it used to be my students interrupted my personal life at times and having to work that out, but now my personal life is interrupting my work life. It is so
Right.
important to find that balance, to get outdoors, do all we can for ourselves so we can be a good teacher.
Yeah, here, I'm
Am
having
I
choppiness on my video.
Am I freezing? Oh, it could be Nia's connection. I hope she's not having any technical issues.
Yeah, here, I'm still freezing up. We got poor quality.
All right, we have a comment from the audience from Elisa Sanford, who says the way that they take care of themselves is by having a scheduled workout
Right.
daily. So they know exactly what time they're going to work out and they take a break. Instead of doing, just taking a break and having a scheduled time to work out, I think is a very great idea. Unfortunately, I have not done that yet, but I think that's a really great tip. Thank you, Elisa. All right, any more discussion on this topic of self-care?
This is Nia. Give me a second. I'm blacked out. And this is Ken.
Yes, Kent?
I want to mention deaf counselors, deaf businesses, using platforms online to provide resources. I'm familiar with several folks that are doing exercise resources on Instagram Live, for example, working with the community. Also, folks have now turned to business and industry online, and it's amazing to see those changes in our community. Very inspiring.
Yes, and I need to let you all know, and oh
Yeah,
good,
I'm
we have
in.
Nia back. Yeah, Nia is having some
My power went
internet
out,
issues.
so my
Oh, I'll
Wi-Fi
let
went
you
out.
explain. Yeah, go ahead, Nia. You can explain your situation.
Right. Well, this morning I found out that the meeting wasn't tomorrow. I was prepped for tomorrow, and we were scheduled to have a power pole outside that was damaged recently. The city was supposed to fix that, so the power had been off. They told me they would be done by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but we are past 3 o'clock and it's still not done. I hope that doesn't become an issue for this webinar as we continue. So please be patient with me if it does.
We will definitely be patient with you and we will keep going. That actually ties in with number 3, question number 3. We can go ahead and proceed
Okay.
to the next question for now. Question number 2. All right, we've discussed self-care, and now that you're starting to teach, you may have experienced both synchronous learning or self-paced learning, or maybe, one or both. So now synchronous learning is like what we're doing right now, live, where you're watching a teacher teach, or the teacher is teaching live, or you're watching a video live, versus self-paced, where it's pre-recorded and then the student can, watch it and rewind at their own leisure. There are pros and cons for both. Can you tell me what your thoughts are, please? Yes, go ahead, Kent.
As far as instruction and teaching, I think that synchronous teaching is what we're used to. We go to a classroom, typically we're surrounded by students, the teacher presents, she can manage a student's behavior, and that's the model in everyday life in traditional instruction. Currently, with the transition to online teaching, the focus now on online resources, which we do have, yes, we have to look at the pros out of it. Self-paced work. That means that students are doing more work on their own, which also means that as a teacher, we have more work initially as well. We have to produce the content and be able to get that to the students at the right time. Some folks are finding out that they're not used to how to produce that content. They're having to figure out Google Classroom, for example. Class Dojo is another example. There is lots of software, plenty of software available online, but folks are having to learn how to do that at the moment for themselves. Now, again, being self-paced as a deaf person, that type of education, we know that each deaf individual has their own type of timing and rhythm for education and learning. Some people are ready to move forward. Other people need a little more help, a little more support to ease through their frustrations. So with the self-paced module or self-paced type of teaching or instruction, these students can watch the lectures at home, and if they miss something or misunderstand any part of the video, they can just rewind it and replay it. There's no need for anxiety of anyone else in the classroom knowing that they need this repetition because they're working on their own, because it is self-paced. However, again, the initial brunt of the work is laid on the educator. We have to set that system up. Plus, we are looking at potentially going back to a traditional school model. However, with all this online education system in place, whatever's been developed by folks can be in place, because we don't know what's happening a year or 2 years from now. We could be out of the classroom potentially. So understanding how to shift and how to deal with this shift from the traditional classroom model and having the digital classroom model ready for yourself at the moment in case that change happens, you can deal with it. As well as with the digital model, that allows you a lot more one-on-one time with students. In the traditional model, you're spent much more time dealing with student behavior and trying to manage the classroom experience. So this digital shift to education can be a very nice thing for us.
Yes, great points. I see some comments popping up in the chat box, but before we go to those, Nia, can you please share your thoughts?
And this is Nia speaking. Sure, I sure can. I've noticed that online teaching, having the synchronous, like for example, a video conference is nice because you can answer any live questions after they've just been assigned when those questions come up. Now you can assign work to be asynchronous. Like for example, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I have no video conferencing with my students. They work on their own, and then we have an opportunity to check in on Tuesdays and Thursdays via video conference and go ahead and get that debriefing done. Now I see an increase in motivation from my students, and they really appreciate the fact that they're not stuck in a classroom in that type of environment. They appreciate the fact that they're being trusted to work at their own pace, and they feel very valued. So that's been a nice motivator. there's other students who are doing okay with this change, and then there's also a couple of students I have to admit that aren't doing so great with this change. And those are the students that need the constant prompts in the classroom as well. And I find myself doing that or recreating that activity digitally, where I have to check in with them, and then they start chatting with me, and I say, "This is great, but it's not time to chat. You've got to get your work done." So it's interesting to see that dynamic where we have the independent workers. I still deal with the non-independent workers, despite being in a digital instruction classroom. But I do feel just a bit frustrated. I feel like I can't provide the full support that I want to, especially without knowing who's at their house, that may or may not have an educational background, because a lot of families might not have been exposed to that or have an understanding of that. So I do see some kids suffering in those types of environments. So when I do video conference and I do get an opportunity to talk to them, sometimes they can be distracted by a relative, or sometimes I've got to call the family and ask them to wake that particular student up. And it kind of tears me apart to know that there are some folks that are having a tough time with this online transition. It's been tough on some people, and we have to acknowledge that. But in the process of changing, we're also changing everything. We're having to reach out via email to families and update any adaptations we make to our teaching plan when we see there's errors or unclarities in the system we've developed, and we keep enhancing it. And so that's really nice that we can reach out to them like that. And it's nice what Kent said about having that digital instruction ready for the following years. We're not sure what things are going to look like then. And so at my school, we had a conversation about it, how we can do this now. We have to prepare for the following year, because there is going to be a heavy emphasis on remote teaching in case something like this does happen again. Plus, also, there's a big realization that it might even benefit the systems. I'm not really sure, but it seems like the traditional classroom system of schooling that we have set up might change in the future and be much more remote. I do see a lot of pros to it, but then again, I have to admit there are some cons. And so I'm just curious what folks here have to say about that.
Yes, that's true. And there are two comments from the audience so far. Michelle B says that equity is a huge concern right now. So self-paced learning is really important right now to ensure that all students are getting the
This
support
is
they
Nia.
need.
I'm sorry I missed something. You're freezing up again.
Do you want me to repeat it? Okay, I'll summarize. Michelle
It's
B
getting bad for me.
has said that equity is really important right now.
Still bad for me.
I'm just going to go ahead and move ahead, Nia. I'm sorry. I need to proceed.
I'm concerned. My connection's frozen up.
Am I frozen? Let me just check.
Kent says, "You're not frozen to me."
Okay, Nia, I think it's your connection. I'm going to have to continue. I apologize. So yes, equity is important. We will be discussing that actually. That's part of one of my next questions.
I'm back. Please continue.
Equity is definitely a big concern.
Yes.
All right, second person, Rachel Patterson, has said that really both types of teaching can work well. It depends on what exactly you're looking for. Synchronous learning, in that you expect everyone to show up at the same time, and that may not always work for every student. That's why having self-paced learning seems to be better. It also encourages students to become independent learners. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a major pro there. You're teaching your students, you know, self-paced learning is a skill in itself, and not everyone is comfortable with technology. That's a real thing. I'm experiencing that myself as a teacher. Just as you mentioned, having a sub plan, what my experience has been over the last 20 years, 20 plus years of teaching, one of the largest frustrations I experienced is having students pulled out of my classes for different reasons, whether it's
Right.
services, fairs, field trips. So this will definitely solve one of those huge issues for sure. But also with new problems, there come new solutions. Okay, well, let's see what else we have. Are there any comments from anyone else?
This is Kent. Stacy,
Oh, yes, Kent, go ahead.
I just
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to add to that how critical it is It's kind of like the Wild West at the moment. Everything is so
Yes.
new. And it's critical not to feel bad if you're trying something out and you're a bit doubtful about it. This is an entirely new situation. I think it's fantastic that folks are here to learn more, to enhance your own abilities as an educator. And it's important that we never stop the learning process. So, of course, use your resources, check in with your peers, ask friends, family, find out what other school districts are doing, and check in to places like this webinar. I'm so grateful that we have this event here today, and we can only really take it one day at a time. Just if you have groups that you get together with and meet with them again and talk about the transition online and what they have learned from it, and then come back to your daily life and to your daily classroom and how you can shift things. And it's just important on how you approach this. It's important not to be too overwhelmed with what's going on.
I agree. Kent, you said it beautifully. Nia, did you want to say something? I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm still
Yes,
freezing up.
you said it perfectly. That was beautiful, and that actually leads us to the next question. Let's move on. Discussion question number 3. All right. Many deaf students have IEPs, so this question is, how do you plan to keep up with meeting IEP goals remotely? How do you plan to support your students meet their IEP goals? For instance, if they have to have set ASL and English exposure, needs to be split 50-50 within their classes, how do you ensure that? Yes, Kent.
Well, I think, again, I keep saying this is a new challenge and a new situation. We haven't completely aligned all systems, digital and traditional. And so maybe checking in with colleagues and peers, because so far many have focused that IEP goals have been able to be deferred to the following year, is one thing I've heard. And then also really depends on work samples, whatever online work samples they can do, if pictures can be taken of that work sample and sent in. And if it aligns with the metrics, that works out fine. But most traditional forms of metrics are really tough as far as signing and communicating via video. We're going to have to be really creative on what we come up to be able to measure those and track those goals. If not, again, try to deferral for the following year.
Yes, Nia?
And this is Nia speaking. It kind of froze up a lot, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. For what I do in terms of IEP, I think there's a pro in the fact that I use Google Classroom because it has a rubric built in. I have my own rubric, but I started playing around with what Google had, and I saw that it can be adjusted. So I can set it all up, and it's a really nice feature because when the students finish their work, the grades are ready. And it's nice for me to be able to leverage that to to be able to track the IEP uh, with that. And so I track their progress and I keep all of their work samples are housed there. And so I have everything online. And when I need it, it can be sent to me and I can see it and then I have it archived and I have it saved. But the challenge is on some of the goals, they're not able to meet because I'm not interacting with them on a daily basis, not enough to know whether or not they're achieving that goal. So what we've been doing at this point is trying our best to still meet the IEP goals. And one positive thing that has come out of our school is that we do have online IEPs. So everything's accessible already for all the teachers and instructors who might need that. So we have access to the IEP online. Plus, we have the work samples online. We're doing the best we can. And I think everyone feels like in a similar position. We're trying to comply with and meet as much as the IEP as we can. The goal is, of course, to satisfy all the IEP goals for every student. We sign the information via our videos, and that's one of the baselines. So we are achieving that.
Yes, that's true. We also got 2 comments from 2 audience members. The first one is from David Wilcox, and he says it's important to have that one-on-one dialogue
Agree.
with your students, right? That helps with reading and writing, just like signing uh, as well. I totally agree. We have 3 comments. Elisa Sanford again says she feels fortunate because IEPs have a checklist, and so you can work on specific objectives. Yes, definitely. CSD Learns commented they want to recognize a tool from Gallaudet's Clare Center. It's called the Parent Advocate app, and this is a brand new tool for parents to use, and teachers will be recommending that. So I guess you can find more information when you go and look at this Clare Center app. Oh, the website here is Parent Advocacy app, and the website is the URL is here. It looks like you can click on this and download this app. There's also a comment from Anna Byrne, and it says we've had to modify our expectations as a program and have a brief on each student to address what we're able to address during the closure. As long as they set up a minimum standard from the district, and so they're basing their satisfied requirements on that. Okay. Oh, before we move on, Kent.
I'd like to add to that, Stacy. Yeah, you mentioned for parents, this is a great opportunity to build that relationship with them. At school in the classroom, it's easy for them to detach from those school activities. But now that their kids are at home and they're spending more time with them, those IEP goals should be shared and discussed with parents to see what parts of that they can take over and maintain at home with their kids, and maybe have those discussions and conversations and share that. Maybe they don't need a track and be there for tracking purposes, but they can be familiar with the IEP goals and they can be familiar with the process, because typically, like I said, an IEP is mentioned at the meeting once a year, maybe at a triennial when people come together, and maybe parents aren't really too familiar with how the IEP works, but this is a great time to capitalize on the moment and be able to get them really fully engulfed in the IEP itself.
Right. Family engagement is an important tool, and also with the discussion of equity, there are people who don't have equal access. So yes, you're definitely right. Let's move on to the next question. All right, number 4, that ties in actually with equity as we've discussed earlier. So my question is for the two of you. We are working with students that come from diverse settings, and some students may have access to internet, some may live in an area that just doesn't have great Wi-Fi service. Some come from families who are working, some may have family members that cannot communicate with them or just not very involved. So how do you deal with all of these problems from a distance? Nia?
Right, and this is Nia speaking. Like I mentioned, there's a student in particular with a family that I have a hard time getting them to do their work because they rely so much on teacher prompts. So I feel like I'm going out of my way with that student in comparison to the others to reach out, to get on the video phone, to have that direct face-to-face conversation. And that's one thing I can do. Uh, I don't have any students that don't have access to the internet. I don't have a good answer for that question, but I do imagine that if I had a student that was lacking access to the internet, I would then print materials, mail them, and have them mailed back. And that would
Ah,
be one way to handle that. Now, yeah, if there's no Wi-Fi at the house, then that means that that student would also be able to use a telephone or a video phone, but they would be limited as far as what they can do if they were limited to text on a cell phone. So it would take some planning to make things work out. So that's a good question in regards to making materials accessible to the students, or is it just for grading?
well, it depends. Basically, your access to your connection with your students. If you're not able to connect with your students, what can you do? I think really that ties in to Kent, your program. Um, how can that help students who are, quote, off the grid? Just thoughts.
Right. Again, I work at NDC, the National Deaf Center for Post-Secondary Outcomes, and we have a lot of new products recently because of COVID. You can check again, it's nationaldeafcenter.org. That landing page, that homepage, when it opens up, it has COVID-19 resources. There are also learning, educational resources. There are plenty of resources on our webpage at ndc.org. there are a lot of academic departments or school departments reaching out to NDC. And looking in the comments, somebody mentioned pass-fail type of grading. Some universities have turned to that. Uh, some by the third quarter are taking the GPA, are taking the third up to the third quarter for the GPA average, and not including that last quarter. But in relation to that question you said about self-care, just like students nowadays, uh, we can't expect them to take their grades seriously and be the forefront on their mind. They are thinking about surviving at the moment, right? Uh, Especially since students have been undervalued in the system historically. Uh, as teachers, we want to become role models. We want to be education, emotional role models, and be able to provide that help and support. And that's the main thing that we can give back right now is support. Grades, all those other issues, like you just mentioned, the equity and access to services. We have to find a way to fill in those gaps and provide those supports. Like Nia just said, printing out assignments, mailing them, or maybe setting certain grading portions apart. But this is an overwhelming experience, and we don't want to make anyone feel worse when we're all trying to make our best to break through and continue through this situation.
Okay, I see a question that's popped up. Someone wants to ask this question. They're saying, what are your opinions on the quote, no harm grading policy? And this person's school has made it clear that students' grades for this quarter cannot be lower than their previous quarter's grade. What
Right.
are your thoughts?
This is Nia.
Nia?
I think it's reasonable. I think that is reasonable. I know a person that teaches at a mainstream school, and none of the students are graded from here on out. It's an elementary mainstream school, and I think it's fair. I think because of their school, they do have a high low income demographic, people who don't have access to technology. So there's no harm in not grading. But even us as adults, when we take ourselves into perspective, we're struggling. We're struggling at this time, some of us are, to maintain a sense of normality and to continue functioning status quo day to day. And so we need to allow the students to have that space too. We've got to give ourselves some slack. We've got to cut them some slack. As adults, we know we're overwhelmed and we're trying to deal with this, and it's just not right to put those high expectations on our students. That would only contribute to an increased amount of stress and a lot more anxiety and worry about failing and not passing or meeting their grades, about not moving on the following year. And that's not really necessary. And I don't think there's any positives out of doing that.
Yes, Kent?
Right. The pressure to have good grades, the students as well as the teachers, we've got to come up with those lesson plans and that curriculum. Are we in the right state of mind to be grading as well? That's another question that's difficult to quantify. So, right, not thinking about grading, if we just focus on how to make the content accessible to our students, with that as the focus, where the students can appreciate the content, and then also the educator appreciate the time spent, the time put into that, having a video created that they can watch. I know myself as a parent, I do enjoy that when my kids have access to videos like that. You know, and I think it's less about rating and grades, and it's more about content. It's more about producing that material that gets students excited to participate in it.
Yes. And actually, I just had a student reach out to me because they were concerned about their grade. They had a 4.0, yet they were just getting a P, a passing grade, and they're worried about the cumulative effect that that would have on their grade. So yes, there's pros and cons, but definitely we have to keep in mind that we're meeting their needs, their most essential needs. It looks like everyone is pretty much saying the same thing in the comments. All right, let's move on to our next question. There are some students who have already had a struggle even within the regular classroom setting. And now that we're doing distance learning, they need even more supports. So I want to ask if you have found anything that works, maybe for students who have a learning disability or are in special ed or maybe an alternate curriculum. What do you think? What tips do you have that will really work for those types of student? Nia?
Okay, I work, well, I don't work with alternate curriculum. Uh, and the interpreter missed that. But from what I do know from other teachers that do teach SAC schools, there's a lot of visuals for words and images used. And it's very straightforward with a lot of clarity. And one of the reasons for that is because it's already a part of that classroom. And any students that are part of that special ed, whatever they experience in the classroom, has those increased modifications for added visuals. And I believe that if teachers can use something similar online, that might be a challenge because, again, you're not there to prompt the student to be able to provide their support when they benefit from having those nearby adult prompts. But if you can get the family members to be involved, I know a teacher who has a very close relationship with the family and they're very well coordinated and they've functioned like that since the beginning of the school year. So their classroom to online transition was fairly smooth and fluid because they already had a system in place. So seeing that and understanding that with those students, it is particularly tough, but there are benefits, again, from special ed teachers who have already developed those systems. I'm assuming most folks in that arena have something in place which has made their transition easier. I don't want to say it's easy for everyone, but that is some of what I have seen.
Yes. And Kent?
This is Kent. I want to mention how much I appreciate the comment, the chat box. If
Yes.
we haven't looked, you should put some eyes on it because there are some
Right.
really good comments populating there.
I plan to share some of those, yeah.
For in terms of an alternate or modified curriculum, uh, again, I think educators, teachers need to plan on more video time, developing more video resources. Uh, if you can develop resources ahead of time, you've really got to think about each particular student and what type of modification would tailor to them and how that would be beneficial to future years. How you have a new range, a new group of students coming in, you wouldn't have to change your materials because you've had the time to develop them and you'd have that time at home. So it's a great opportunity to get that in place. Also, provide support to the students. You can do more video conference, one-on-one chats, especially with the students who need the support. They would really benefit as far as a discussion in terms of life skills applied to the current timeline of events. And then you can also work in history, math, any content that can be applied to our life challenges. Daily facts that we're living through can be discussed. You can maybe hash one or 2 points out at a time and see the real life applications, which I think is critical for those particular students who need that support to get an understanding of what their home environment is like. Are they experiencing language deprivation? Some of these students might really need to have the time and conversation with a deaf teacher like that. I think it would be something that they tremendously value and would be a highlight. Again, like I mentioned, I'm at MDC and I've developed a game called Deafverse. You can check that out at deafverse.com. That is an educational game that teaches life skills and transition skills and also self-advocacy. And it has students navigate life as a deaf individual and it has them navigate through challenges of their personal rights and their autonomy. So it helps them develop those skills through those virtual experiences. I would encourage if you have a deaf student to have them play the game. They can download that. There are also toolkits that you can use in your teaching and reference to the game. So that's something modern that is available at NDC.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you. And that game, Deaf First, now's a good time to think about adding something related to COVID-19 as a part of that game. What do you do
Uh,
in particular situations? Yeah,
that's kind of hairy there.
right. I see some really great comments from the audience that I'd like to go ahead and share. Jennifer Zuvik says that she has found a hard time finding appropriate accommodations for deafblind students online. How do you support deafblind students from a distance and with online learning? Any ideas? I'm hoping someone can share some ideas. Another person named Clarice West says, for students with learning disabilities, you could mail a packet for them to work on, maybe 2 weeks worth of work, mail that physically to their home. That's another way. Elisa Sanford is saying provide a clear learning plan for the day to day, which will really help these students.
Right.
And also have frequent small group meetings with the
Right.
teacher. And office hours truly do help a lot as well.
Mhm.
If a student wants to ask more questions, they can use that office hour to ask. And I personally am doing that as a high school teacher at my school. I have office hours and I have a virtual class time of just 30 minutes. It doesn't always last the full 30 minutes. That time really is just to connect with students who need that human contact, you know.
Right.
It's so crucial to have that. Uh,
Stay.
yes, go ahead, Kent.
Stacy, I just want to add it's a great time for self rumination, to think about any gaps in your own teaching, self reflection about how you teach in the classroom. It's okay to be mindful and make notes and journal of what your teaching is like, where you feel your own gaps are, where you feel you can improve. This is a short term experience, and over the long term, you can really, really make improvements to yourself. I don't foresee this taking too long into the future. But when we get back to the daily life, then you can look back and reflect on all the positives that you came out of this experience.
I completely agree. When I think about my own experience with this whole thing, I have taught for so long. I started teaching when we actually had a physical blackboard that we wrote on. Then it changed to a whiteboard, and then we started using technology to teach. So, yeah, for many of us that are in this boat, now is a great time to kind of clean up our system and what the tools that we have. Now is a great time to really see what works and what hasn't worked over our years of experience. Those of you who are new teachers, uh, like Nia's a teacher her second year, this experience is actually more enhanced because you now know something like this can happen. And Kent, there was a question about deaf verse. Is that for all ages?
Stacy, that's a good question. The content covered in the game can apply. I'd say there's not a hard number. There are no sensitive topics, so it can apply to a wide range of ages. You can say it's G-rated, so it is accessible. We do have had elementary age players, middle school age players, and high school age players. Now, understand that the content that is covered aligns with transitional age goals, like, for example, living skill goals, uh, high school graduate independent living skill goals. And so it is aligned with CTE type of programs. And that's where it applies the most. And that's where it aligns with IEP goals as well. But in terms of learning life experiences, yes, Deafverse is in American Sign Language. There's text for those who would like to read it. There's audio for those who would like to hear what is signed. I encourage everyone to go ahead and visit, and there are more resources shared. Try it out and see if it's a great fit for your teaching.
Nia saying, I can't see the screen, it's blacked out. Stacy saying, okay, so that is deafverse.com. Okay, deafverse.com.
Yes, exactly. And there are even more resources specifically for education. Just visit ndc.org. Again, like I've mentioned it before, there's a whole host of information there.
Stacy saying, so someone is asking the question about how to reach out to deafblind students because it is so crucial we reach out to them right now. I personally don't know any answers, but if any of you have any ideas that could really enhance this discussion. I don't have any deafblind students right now, but I know I will in the future, and that's definitely something we should be prepared for. It looks
Right.
like someone mentioned Clarice West actually says NCDB, National
Right.
Center for Deafblind, is a resource. Check their website,
Great
they may
comment.
have
Yep.
some support. Okay. Any more discussion related to this topic? All right, let's
I
see
think we're
what we
good.
have next. Of course, we're open to more questions. Here we have a long list of resources, and I've added a few things related to different resources that you can take a look at. If you have more resources to share, now would be a great time to go ahead and share them. Go ahead. I've shared a few things that I know of and I've made use of as a teacher, like Brain Pop. Have any of you heard of Brain Pop?
Yes,
It's a
yes.
really, yeah, it's a fun cartoon, but there's different subjects and it can be for the whole range of ages, K through 12, depending on the subject. If you want to learn about science or history, this is a really great website to use. Kent's comment, oh yes, deafverse.com is actually in the nationaldeafcenter.org website. It looks like more resources are being added here on the chat box. Maybe we can compile this and send this out to everyone. Oh, I see someone, Sherry Solomon says there's wizard.me, Wizer.me. Have you heard of
I,
that?
I haven't tried that.
Online worksheets, quizzes, online vocabulary. One that I use is flowcabulary.com, which is same idea as that, but yes, it's always great to add more. For Sherry, I have one question for you. In Wiser, is it signed or is it just the words that are used? I'll make sure it says yes, I'll make sure we make a list of all of these resources and send them out. If you've registered, then you will receive a list of all these resources. Yes, Nia? Oh,
I'm
you're
freezing up
freezing.
again.
Okay, I wanted to add dcmp.org. A lot of teachers don't know about this website, but I really use it often. dcmp.org has movies. Every
Right.
movie is captioned, and there's also a text description for students who are visually impaired or blind. There's also audio, and now is a great time for you to share the videos that you want your students to watch online. It used to be that if students missed class that they could watch these videos. Now you can have them watch these videos anytime. Most of them are documentaries, but it's really great to have these video or movies captioned.
And this is Kent speaking. There's a lot of good stuff in the comments. I saw Yahoo. I'm really glad and appreciative of all those folks that are pitching in their ideas in the comment box. I need my camera and take a picture of all the comments.
Trevor Anderson says you can add ASL signed videos to Kahoot! Exclamation mark. That game. I really enjoy that game. Yeah, Trevor Anderson says that you can actually add ASL videos to it individually so that students can play with one another. And that's a really great way to review information. I totally agree. Kahoot is a wonderful game. Have
Right?
either of you used it? Okay, another question has come up. It says, what resources are there for students who are just starting to write or read? Maybe they're emerging or maybe uh, delayed or there's language deprivation. What would be some good tools or resources for them? Nia?
Right. I am currently working with some students that are emerging readers. Uh, and I also have some students that are low-level readers, second level as well. And I use readworks.com.
ReadWorks?
Readworks.com is something I use, as well as, oh boy, what's that other website? I think it's Epic Books. I use Epic for entertainment, for fun reading, and there's a good selection there. And they also have the reading level that you can go by, and you can filter books based on grades or reading level. So that's great to have that control. So ReadWorks is the same thing. With ReadWorks, I have the ability to have a student read a passage and then have some understanding questions for comprehension. And that's what I use for an IEP as well. Um, and I plan to use ReadWorks for 2 days. where they read the first day, and then the second day they read the passage again, and then they respond to those comprehension questions. And I have all the questions in signs. It's ready, so they can digest it that first day, see it again the second day, and then by the third day we can have a discussion on the book, and they can go ahead and sign to me about it. And that's one program that I really enjoy. I wasn't aware of it until recently. And again, we can use, they have kits that we can use. Uh, and I don't have much experience with that, but I do know that my students are using that. So I've decided to go with that. They really like ReaderWorks. Again, Epic and ReaderWorks. And then there's also Go Formative for testing, for math testing. Tests there can be created. You can also add sign language to your videos. And then all that testing is there. And get, it's Go Formative. And those are some of the software that I know about.
Kent?
Right. I had checked. There's Duolingo. It's a language learning app for people who are second, third language learners, right?
Yes.
They just launched a portion for Duolingo for kids who are, again, emerging readers and want to have some sight words. So it's a great app to look at. I think it's releasing this week. There's another one, Khan Academy. That is a free resource. There's also Khan Academy for kids that exists. I would recommend folks check that out.
That's wonderful. Teachers are pouring in so many great resources here in the chat. CSD Learns will distribute all of this information on their social media channel. They will compile all of this so that we can all learn from one another and see what's working for our students. We now have less than 5 minutes left. So I want to ask if anyone has any burning questions or something that you have to discuss. Here is your chance. Nia and Kent, do either of you have some closing remarks that you'd like to add?
Open floor for comments? Sure. This is Kent. I just want to emphasize this is a new experience for us all.
Mm-hmm.
Find the positive in everything you do, whether it be home life, personal life, work life. Focus on self-enhancement, focus on educating yourself, spend time meditating, thinking about yourself. And if you feel stuck or you feel like you've made a mistake along the way, don't worry. You're here, you're self-aware, you know that you need to find support, reach out to those colleagues, work in tandem with those folks.
Yes, Nia?
And this is Nia. Yeah, that's also something I wanted to echo. We can feel off kilter. It's not easy during this transition, but keep in mind, we're all going through the same thing. It's a new situation for us all. And so there's no need to feel at a disadvantage because you're new. And, you know, I have some team members that have all the experience online and I don't have that. So I feel like it's brand new to me. So it's great to have that language from other folks. So for those of you folks out here that are working with young new teachers, let them know as well. I appreciate that the more experienced folks shared stuff with me, so I appreciate that. Support your newbies in your field, right? Some people are out there thinking, I should be better than this already. But no matter who you are, it's a tough experience. Things have changed. Be easy on yourself.
Right.
We are now video conferencing, signing with students, and if you're able to make that shift and keep up with that, that's a lot in and of itself. I've seen some teachers realize or be aware that they're not going to be able to video conference with their students, but now they're realizing that they do have that option and that they can be in touch with their students. So it's great for that realization to be made by a lot of educators. Some teachers were thinking, oh, that's it, we're out of school, things are done, but that's not the case. We will continue.
Right. Just take it with grace and ease. Just so you know, CSD Learns will be releasing 4 new STEM toolkits on cybersecurity, and we will feature 5 adult role models. So keep an eye out on CSD Learn's social media channel. That's where you can get this information this week and then use that within your class as well. All right, unfortunately, it looks like time has run out. To wrap up, make use of checking out what's in the chat box and fill out the survey. We welcome all of your ideas and pointers. Thank you to Kent and Nia again. Everyone for joining us out there as well, even with all of your tech issues, Nia. I'm so glad you could end with us.
Sorry about my tech issues.
I'm
Thank you,
so
guys. Bye.
appreciative. All right, bye-bye, everyone.